Hey copycat quilters, I'm Ginger and welcome back to my channel. One of the things I love to do is to make quilts for charity. You know, you only have so many friends and family and spaces in your house where you can put a quilt. And I counted up, and last year I made 14 quilts for charity, and I enjoyed making every one of them. A lot of them I shared here on the channel with you. So this is Saturday night. You can see it's dark outside, and Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and that's supposed to be a day of service. And I actually have it off for a holiday this year. I am going to plan to see how many quilts I can make in one day. Quilt tops, I have several quilts that need to be bound, so I finished those up as well. And just see how many quilts and quilt tops can I produce out of this room in one day that I can use to give to charity. I always enjoy thinking about the people that receive my quilts, how happy they would be to get them, and maybe it just brings a smile in a time in their lives whenever they could use a little smile and a little help. I'm going to use my Mathmagical pattern. I have a lot of squares and rectangles and shapes cut out for that already, so I can breeze through those really quickly. And then I may also do another one of my scrap patterns that I have for sale that's called Starry Daze, that's really quick to throw together. Different blocks for it, and you can make different size quilts. So come along with me. Let's see what I can do. And I will give you the total count tomorrow. That'll be Sunday, so I can post this on MLK Day. Thanks, and I hope maybe you play along with me. So I did do a little organizing to help myself out. This quilt is spray basted, ready to be quilted. This is a finished top, and I have this backing for it that needs to be sewn together. But I actually laid this out, and I thought I'd explain what I meant by this. I lay these out and patchwork the back together, and then I pin the seams that need to be sewn together with safety pins, so that whenever I take it to my sewing machine, I know exactly which seam needs to be sewn, and I don't get confused and sew things together the wrong way. So I pin the different seams together, and then, you know, if I can't keep that going, I'll take it back and lay it out after I've sewn some seams and sew those seams then. But it really helps me keep things organized and avoid that having to go back and rip seams out and sew it back together because I grabbed the wrong seam. Pinned them together, so it's ready to sew the strips together. I just need to sew them. I have a lot of projects like that. They're ready to be finished. Then this is a quilt that I made. This was the 3-yard scrappy quilt, and I need to piece together this backing for that one. This is a video that I've filmed and everything that I'll be showing soon. I need to find a backing for that one and cut it. And then I have these that are finished and quilted. Just need to have binding put on them, which is so silly to lay quilts around that need binding. Like, geez, that doesn't take very long, and it takes up a lot of space to have a finished quilt that's just waiting for binding. So I have that one. I've got this pretty batik one that needs binding, and this one that's a quilt that my mom made out of a pattern that I worked up and shared with her. I have some binding cut, and then there's other things laying around here in various states of being finished. So here we go. Let's get started. I also forgot I have these to work on. So I've got the blocks made for this quilt. I need to lay out to finish doing the layout and sew it together to finish the top, but all of the squares are made for it. And this is my pattern called Starry Daze that I have on my website, gingertquiltco.com. And this is a light version of it, and then at Christmas I made a dark version of it, and I'll put the link to that video below. But these are ready. These are some quilts that I started that I never finished because I didn't really like the way they were turning out, but they're very far along. I need to add some borders on the sides, but they're this really cute science fabric, and I think they'll be great charity quilts. And that's everything that's laying out in close proximity. So I have a lot of work to do. You saw how many quilts I had that needed to be bound. Cutting, binding, and binding quilts are probably my least favorite things about quilting altogether, but at least the AccuQuilt makes it a lot faster and way more accurate. So right now I'm subcutting into 8.5-inch sections, and then I'll run it through the AccuQuilt and cut my 2.5-inch strips. Now, even with the AccuQuilt, cutting all this binding probably took me at least an hour or more to cut it, do the mitered seams together, and then press it into place. But now I have a lot of binding, even more than I need for these two quilts. Okay, for another handy dandy tip, I take the toilet paper holder out of our bathroom and I put my binding onto it, and then I can use it to feed that binding straight to my serger so that I can serge the binding on. I have another video on how I use fusible thread to serge my binding on, and of course I will link that below. And just so you know, it was a snowy day in Pennsylvania, so I had plenty of time to stay indoors and sew, and my wonderful neighbor shoveled me out because my man was out of town. And now it's time for show and tell. This is the famous potato chip quilt, and it's all bound and ready to go to charity. This is a beautiful storm at sea that I made when I first got my AccuQuilt and I was trying to figure out how to make the shapes work. This is from the 8-inch cube, and I really love this quilt. It's beautiful batiks, but you know, I planned it for charity, so I'm going to give it away, but it may just be on my list of something to make for myself. And here's the backing I had to piece together for one of my quilts. This one uses a block that was left over from the front and some donated fabric that I got from my guild. This is the quilt top for that back, and it's all ready now to go to the long armor. This is a quilt I made using that Mathmagical block, and I have a video about how I chose the colors for it. Here's another backing that I had to piece together. You know, this was one of those ones where I kept adding pieces and it wasn't quite enough and adding pieces, but fortunately I had enough of this purple and kind of green fabric that I think it really turned out very cute. That backing will be used for this quilt. This is my Can You Scrap a 3-Yard quilt. I have another video I'll post below, but I think this backing perfectly matched the purples and greens in this quilt top. I feel like all I did today was piece a bunch of backings, but you know, I think that was the thing that was holding me up from finishing some of these quilts. So here's one that's not very stunning. It has a black and white print, and then a black and white print with these cute words about food on it. And I just made a simple down the middle strip so that I could make the backing big enough for the quilt. And here's the quilt that I'm going to post a video about soon that will go with that backing that I just created. This one's fun with all kinds of hockey prints, and again, it's another great charity quilt, and I think this one will be cute for a little boy who's crazy about hockey. This is a quilt that my mom made using my Mathmagical system, and I was really excited that she was able to make it with very sparse instructions, and she's usually one of those people that follows the patterns, so I was happy she was able to use the instructions I gave her to make this quilt. I did have to piece together another backing for this one, but it's a very plain backing, and it's going to be the perfect complement to a beautiful quilt on the front. Okay, I am finished with my day of service quilts. I ended up piecing together backing for 4 quilts. They're now ready to go to the long armor because I have a friend who long arms for free for charity quilts. I finished binding 3 quilts that have been sitting around here forever, so they definitely needed to move out the door. And I do have one more quilt that I'm going to bind this afternoon, but right now I think it's time for lunch. I did cheat a little because I worked about 2 hours this morning in addition to yesterday. But to be fair, yesterday there were some championship football games on and I was a little distracted. I did sew, but I had to watch a lot of it too. So I did want to finish up these things this morning, and I will finish up binding that last quilt this afternoon. So I'd love to hear if you donate quilts to charities, what kind of charities you do, or if you prefer to give them just to families and friends and maybe new babies. Everybody you know that has a new baby gets a quilt. Regardless of what you do with them, I hope you enjoy quilting as much as I do. I hope it is your escape and you really enjoy just the thrill of making something, putting things together, and having something to show for it. So enjoy your quilting until next time, and I'll see you then.